I want to talk about an update to the pipe bomb case. Last time we covered it, we said that they caught a guy and we showed videos of Kash Patel talking about the need to protect our capital, and we cannot, treat the people who attack our nation's capital with leniency, which I just thought of course was just I just couldn't stop myself from laughing, honestly, to hear the same administration which just pardoned all those people who attacked the Capitol with violence, including those who planned it, are now going to say, no, this is where we draw the line, is with people attacking our nation's capital. Now, after the fact, if this man was caught 6 months earlier, this man would have been pardoned. If this man was caught January 19th, 2025, he would have been pardoned right after by the president of the United States and the mass pardoning he did. And I have no evidence otherwise to counter it. So this is the problem with blanket pardons, and those blanket pardons have led to fatalities. And just hearing them speak in that manner of just, this high and mighty way of we're protecting the Capitol, it just landed terribly. Anyway, the way that they found the guy was reviewing footage, checking shoes and what type of shoe imprints his feet left, and they weren't able to find anything. But eventually, after re-reviewing some of the old evidence, they're able to find the guy and catch him. He was a Trump supporter. He was a Trump supporter who told the FBI that he believed that the 2020 election was rigged and that he was placing these bombs in service of that goal of trying to help stop the country from being stolen, trying to stop the country from having its democracy stolen from underneath it. And I've talked about this before. If you stormed the White House and you believed that the country was being stolen from out underneath your feet, that makes sense to me. If you truly believe that the options are democracy or not democracy, and the only way you can have democracy is by storming the Capitol, then who wouldn't? And that's what made those lies so pernicious. That's what made those lies so terrible. You could see the fellow on your screen right before you. So anyway, Brian Cole Jr. said that he believed the election conspiracies, that it was rigged, and did that in relation to it. And the reason why he wasn't caught for so long, because I saw so many people saying, like, this guy sat in Nancy Pelosi's chair and they caught him super quick. This guy, it took them like 5 years. What the heck? The difference is one guy sat back in Nancy Pelosi's chair with nothing covering his face, smiling for the cameras. The other person, like, hooded up, did everything to conceal their face, didn't use shoes from a store local, but like did everything he could to conceal his movement. So that's like the big change. Now, I want to visit one person in relation to this, and that is Dan Bongino, because a big theory for a long time in MAGA world has been that this guy was a inside plant, that he was an FBI agent, he was a CIA agent, he was some sort of federal asset, and he did this in order to make Trump supporters look bad because planting bombs is not a good look. That was the theory, and that the reason that they hadn't caught him was because he was a federal asset, and of course they're not going to arrest a federal asset and display it on TV, and that was the theory. And who would have thought that our nation's best and brightest, Dan Bongino, would be on the case? Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino, or podcaster, as you might know him from some of his best and brightest political commentary.
This is Karate Man. Double leg. The jump kick. The side kick. The roundhouse. The tie kick. Body.
Now, the reason we're talking about Dan Bongino specifically is while we could point to a few major MAGA figures in the media space, he is the deputy FBI director. So if there's a terrorist attack on this country, he's the type of people who should be like our guard against that. And back in the day, when we were talking about this, an attempted terror bombing of the United States in service of trying to stop the transfer of power, of somebody who believes in the 2020 big election hoax that Donald Trump put forward. Dan Bongino was out there saying that this guy was an inside job. And he said that he was basically certain that he was a government contractor. He was talking very confidently about it back at the time.
You ready for number 2? Here's another one. Separate whistleblower reaches out to me. This I've been working on for a while. This isn't new. Folks, let's just get this out of the way about January 6th. It is now confirmed. I mean, you knew this in advance. So this is why I put this first. This is not breaking news. However, I can confirm to you, in case you were even remotely deluded about it, say you're a lefty watching my show, that the FBI 100% had undercovers in the crowd on January 6th. I know you know that. I'm just saying Christopher Wray's been shady about it and others. I'm telling you from a source on the ground with photo evidence to back it up. The FBI and other agencies, not just the FBI, by the way, had multiple undercovers on the ground on January 6th. Period. There's now no disputing it. I've seen the evidence. Number 2, the pipe bombs that were placed at the DNC and the RNC that I believe were planted there on purpose by people looking to frame Trump supporters to stop the objection to the certification of the vote. They didn't want people talking about voter fraud problems, so they needed this. After the pipe bombs were found, assets on the ground, including a whistleblower who was not there but was one of the assets on the ground, was briefed about the pipe bombs the next day and shown a picture of a guy in a hoodie. Hey, we're looking for this guy. Planted these pipe bombs. And they were like, wow, that's crazy. Almost killed Kamala Harris, God forbid. This whistleblower tells me that, but 2 days later, after the pipe bombs, he notes, emphasis his, without explanation, they were told to stand down. No need to look for the guy anymore, which is really strange because the FBI is telling us now there's like a $22 trillion reward for finding this guy. Is it 500,000? You get the point. So the FBI is trying to find a guy, but not trying to find a guy 2 days later when the evidence trail was hot. Why do you think that is? Because maybe in that period they found out who the guy was and they were like, oh shit, we can't have them knowing that.
So this keeps going. He just keeps going on and on and on about how certain he is that this guy is a contractor, that he's a federal agent, which obviously we now know not to be the case. Now, if you were to look back on this, the least embarrassing way to respond to this would be, I was wrong. I said I was almost certain. Turns out I was wrong. There's a difference between being outside the FBI and now being in the FBI. And now having access to more resources, I can say that before I was wrong, now I am correct. Right? That would be embarrassing. That would be the least embarrassing way to do it. He chose a different strategy. He instead came out and said that the reason he said those things was because he was paid to do so.
You know, I don't know if you remember this. This is before you became the deputy FBI director. You put a post on X right after this happened. And you said there's a massive cover-up because the person that planted those pipe bombs, they don't want you to know who it is because it's either a connected anti-Trump insider or an inside job. You said that, you know, long before you were even thought of as deputy FBI director.
Yeah, that's why I said to you, this investigation's just begun. We are pretty comfortable. We have our guy. I think again, legal process starts to surface and information, facts start to come out. The public's going to be very comfortable with the investigation that was conducted under Director Patel and his leadership. He's been great on this. But I don't want to, you know, listen, I was paid in the past, Sean, for my opinions. That's clear. And one day I'll be back in that space. But that's not what I'm paid for now. I'm paid to be your deputy director, and we base investigations on facts. And, you know, it was interesting. I was looking out in the crowd today at the presser, and I saw a couple of media figures who you and I both know who promoted the other scandal, the collusion hoax.
And I thought to myself, you know, the difference between us and them is, you know, we evolve. As information and new inputs come out, we can produce different outputs because that's what we believe in. We believe in facts and investigations guided by facts. There were people out there in that crowd, I'm sure still believe in this collusion fairy tale hoax. So we'll see. We're going to be guided by the facts as this thing goes forward. And I can't stop the, you know, I leave the truck here without thanking the president.
Of course he can't. Of course he can't. But that's the big thing here. I was paid to do so. I gave my opinions. What do you mean it was paid to give his opinions? Either it's true or it's not true. Either you have integrity or you don't have integrity. If I am doing a show like this and I tell you that I support Ukraine, if 20 years from now I said, well, Dylan, you say now that you shouldn't have supported Ukraine. Why did? Oh, well, at the time I was paid. Well, then what I'm saying is that my integrity is up for sale. Is that back then I was trying to get attention, I was trying to get eyes on me, I was trying to get butts and seats, trying to get views, trying to get subscriptions, and so I said these things to get viewership. If you say that I was being paid, it implies a certain amount of, I don't want to use the word grifting, but it implies a certain amount of, like, this is almost like a performance art to you. And I mean, I don't know why people would suggest such a thing. I mean, it certainly doesn't look like it. It looks like he's doing very serious work.
This is Karate Man.
But regardless, this shows the difference between the Trump loyalists out there in the streets and the Trump loyalists in the sheets. See, this is somebody who is out there podcasting, speaking to the MAGA world, listening to what they wanted, and then playing to that. That's why he behaved like he did. Sometimes it was ridiculous, but sometimes what people want is ridiculous. And, you know, his image is kind of ridiculous. But then he was chosen to be deputy FBI director. And a bunch of previous things that he had said that had been listening to the crowd, like, yes, let's go after Epstein. Yes, the J6 bomber was a federal inside asset, and XYZ was no longer so useful when you actually had to do the functions of the job. And it turns out what you said about the J6 bomber was not true. And also the commitments you made about Jeffrey Epstein does not line up with your boss's interests. And so Dan Bongino, as well as many others, their reputation has gone down a bit. Pam Bondi the most, but Dan Bongino as well. And it's part of the reason why he had that protest where he stayed at home after work for some time after the Jeffrey Epstein stuff. But now, once again, another one of these previous incidents coming up to bite him. And now it seems, is this going to be his explanation in the future? Like, I got paid, I have changed. I've changed is one thing. He shouldn't keep up mentioning he was paid, because then it just sounds like I said it because I was paid to say it. Which, you know, if you're there for loyalty in Trump's inner circle, is not impossible. Certainly doesn't look credible.